this will be the very last segmentation guide that you will ever need. If you are in e-commerce, if you're using Klaviyo, if you have a subscription business, even not a lot of people show how to do things in a subscription business. I'm going to show you everything. I'm going to show you how it works with email, with subscribers, how it works with RFM, how it works with zero-party data. I'm going to do this in real accounts that have millions of subscribers, but everything I show you today can and will apply to your own brand regardless of the size that you're in. And I think it really pays to know who you're taking advice from. So I opened up this page by CXL. CXL is a training institute, and as you can see, the instructors are literally the top 1% of e-commerce marketers. This is me. I have actually taught about this topic extensively in CXL, outside of CXL, in private workshops with companies. I really know what I'm talking about, and I promise you this will be the last segmentation guide you'll ever need. It's going to be a long one because I want to show you the fundamentals and the basics of how things work so that you learn how to think about segmentation also. And then I'm going to go into Klaviyo and I'm going to show you where to click and what to do in a step-by-step way that everybody can apply. So let's go. Okay, so let's talk about what segmentation actually is. If you think about it, your brand has a bunch of different contacts. You have people that have purchased from you. You have people that have been signing up to receive your emails. You have basically a pool of people that have given you that information. And in many cases, you will have a record log of how they've interacted with your brand over time. So if we imagine that this large box here is your total pool of contacts, what segmentation is the process of creating meaningfully different groups within this total pool of contacts. And you can do this in many different ways, and you're gonna learn all of them in this video. But just to give you a sense, you could segment users in these are customers and these are not customers. These are people who engaged with us recently and people who did not engage with us recently. You could do so based on where they're located or what their age is or what their gender is. There's all sorts of ways that you could take this huge pool, hopefully huge, all of this pool of contacts that you have and break them into meaningfully different groups. Segment is basically this, a group of people that are similar within the group and different with people outside the group. So this is the simplest definition. Similar within, different outside. And in e-commerce in particular, if you are watching this, I'm assuming you are in e-commerce, the most popular technology there is about CRM marketing, which is Klaviyo, has the following distinction. Other technologies use other definitions, but we're going to focus on Klaviyo this time. There's the word segment, which is what I just described, and then there's the word list. And in many ways, those two things are the same. A list is a group of people that have done something or have showed a certain characteristic, and so is the segment. The prime difference is that the list is static and the segment is dynamic, meaning that if I enter a list today, I will always be part of that list unless I actively choose to remove myself by unsubscribing, or if you, the brand owner, decides to kick me out of the list. A segment, on the other hand, being dynamic, means that people can enter and exit the group at any moment. And to give you a sense, imagine that you had a segment of those that have not purchased, and that segment had 100 people. If one of those people decided to purchase, your segment would then have 99 people. If those same 100 people were part of a list and that person purchased, they would still stay within the list. So that's the difference between segments and lists. Now, what people often think about when they think about segmentation is that basically it's either unimportant, meaning we just blast everybody. And this is a very big problem, because when you do that, you end up having what we call deliverability issues. In other words, your messages do not reach the recipients. And that's because when you message everybody, you automatically message people that are not interested in your messages. And when that happens, basically, you are sending a signal to the inbox providers like, I don't know, Gmail, Yahoo, and so on, that you are not really a trustworthy sender, because people are not interested in receiving your messages and they don't engage with them. So you end up having long-term issues. The other thought that people have is that segmentation is something like super complicated and like magical in a way, and like it needs to like be super granular and have like endless conditions and so on. And what usually happens when you go in that direction is that you end up not sending enough, because you make it so hard for yourself that it's basically impossible to keep up. Like imagine that, again, I have this audience here and I decide to segment it in two groups. The only purpose of segmenting really would be that I treat those two groups separately. If I were to message them in the same way, there's no point to segmenting them, right? If I chose to do that, I would need twice the messages to reach them. Now imagine that I were to segment people like this. The number of messages that I would need to be sending would go up exponentially. So overcomplicating things can also be a trap. And if you really think about it, like from a practical business standpoint, what you really should do is two things. Number one, maximize the number of save sends that you can send. And when I say save sends, I mean send as many messages to as many people as possible without damaging your deliverability. That would be the number one objective, because simply by having a lot of eyeballs on your messages, you will build a stronger brand. People will remember you more people will see your messages, hence consume the messages, and ultimately click through and purchase your products. So you want to have volume, you want to reach a lot of people in a safe way. That's your number one objective. And then when you have done this, the next objective that you have is to start segmenting users in a way that will lead to incremental benefit, meaning that you treat segment A and segment B and segment C and segment D in a different way that will result in more incremental results for you. It only makes sense if the different content leads to more results. So that's basically it. And like from a theoretical standpoint, you could very well stop watching this video right now, because it really just boils down to this: maximizing reach in a safe way and sending meaningfully different content to different groups of people so that you can get better results. That's it. But there's a lot of nuance into how you can actually do this. And I'm going to walk you through everything right now. Okay, I'm now going to show you how to think about segmentation for e-commerce. Again, this is for e-commerce in a theoretical way. I'm going to do this first, and then we're going to go to Klaviyo and build the segments together. But I want you to understand how to think about this first. So, as I said, you have your database. This is your total list of contacts. The first segmentation that you should consider is prospects, meaning people that never purchased from you, and then customers. Those are customers, meaning they're people that have spent money with your brand. And if you think about it, this again is a very different type of context. So it does make sense to target them in a meaningfully different way. Prospects, they've never tried the product, they probably need to be convinced really of the value of the product, and they need to have their first purchase de-risked. They need to feel that they can try in a relatively risk-free way to experience the value proposition of the product. The customers, on the other hand, They have purchased the product. So perhaps the goal is to actually get them to use the product so that they can experience the value proposition of the product. And then having done this, to do what? To expose them to new products that would enhance the original value proposition or get them to explore and discover new ways to benefit from your company or to refer others to you. There's different types of objectives that you could have for customers. But fundamentally, that's the first distinction. The second distinction, which is what we call the recency of engagement. So we have prospects and customers, which can then be divided based on the recency of their engagement. I'm gonna draw a line like this, and I'm gonna explain to you exactly what this is in a moment. So imagine that the very top section here is the most recent prospects and the most recent customers, meaning people that signed up recently or purchased recently or opened an email recently. Recency can be used to segment people in all sorts of ways. And the reason why you want to be segmenting by recency, recent, active, lapsing, and lapsed, so progressively less recent, is because the more recent the last action the user took is, the more likely it is that they will repeat the action again. And you can of course think of cases where I recently purchased this, but I did not like it, meaning I will never buy again, and that can be true. But if you view groups of recent customers and not recent customers, the recent customers will always be more likely than the not so recent customers. And to put it very simply, the recency of the last action is predictive. The more recent, the more likely it is to happen again. The less recent, the less likely it is to happen again. Which is why, if you see how most CRM marketers or email marketers, SMS marketers, etc. do things, they always say opened in the last 30 or opened in the last 90. That's because that's relatively recent. And by the time you watch this video, by the way, you will know more than all of those guys do. So keep watching. So you want to have prospects and customers, and then you want to segment those by essentially recency levels. This can be the last 7, the last 30, the last 60, the last 90, 120, 365, 2 years even. And the reason why you want to have it separately like this is because you want to structure those so that they are mutually exclusive. What I mean by that is that somebody that exists here should not also be included here or here, which in effect would mean that this would be engaged or signed up in the last 7 days, and this would be in the last 8 to 30, and this would be 31 to 60, 61 to 90, 91 to 120. Why do you do this? You do this because you want to see how the different segments perform differently. And what you'll find is that the people in the earlier segments usually drive 95% of the results. So from a deliverability standpoint, you don't want to be messaging everybody that you see here on the same frequency. You want to be messaging those with more or less all of your messages, those with slightly fewer messages, and those down at the bottom with very few messages at all. Because if you do so more frequently, you're basically reaching out to people that are unlikely to respond, hence you are risking your deliverability. Everything I'm showing you now will also show you on Klaviyo, don't worry, but do keep watching. It's really important that you understand the background to all of this. So, just like we have our recency, we have what we call frequency. And frequency is how many times has somebody done something. So frequency in the context of customers could be that they've placed an order a specific number of times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 20 orders. And the same idea about recency applies here. The more frequent the action the customer has taken is, the more likely it is that they will repeat the action again in the future. And you can use this to create cohorts or segments of people that are extremely likely to engage. So the most recent, frequently purchasing customers who automatically have spent a lot of money with you are your most valuable customers. And those that are not recent but have purchased many times, those are valuable customers that you have almost lost, and you should consider retargeting separately. So that's the power of frequency. When it comes to subscription customers in particular, so this is true of companies that sell supplements, beauty products, anything that would be sold as a subscription, you have 3 additional states within the customer group. You have what you'd call the one-time purchaser or OTP customer. You have the active subscription customer. Those are customers that are on a paying subscription, meaning they are getting billed recurringly to receive the product. And then you have the churned customers. Those are basically customers that canceled their active subscription. And again, those 3 groups should be treated very differently, of course. The one-time purchaser should be essentially sold on the value of the active subscription. The churned customers should be targeted so that they see that you've updated the value proposition of the product, or that there's a new product, or that there's another way and reason why they should purchase again, maybe big discount. And the active subscribers should instead be ultimately exposed to other things they can add to their subscription. So it's totally different states. And again, going back to my original point, what's the purpose of segmentation? Reach as many people as possible with as many messages as possible in a way that doesn't hurt your deliverability. That's number 1. And number 2 is target them with separate content that would have incrementality, which is what we're talking about now. And then to make this even more powerful, we have to consider the following, that within those groups, and this applies to prospects as well, but let's focus on the customers, there's different user motivations. Maybe this person purchased because they want to improve their sleep. Maybe somebody else purchased because they want to improve their gut health. And maybe this person purchased because they want to gift the product to somebody else. If you take a look at the pop-up video I showed the other days in the YouTube channel, you'll see exactly how you can collect those user motivations. But it might make sense to segment users based off of them, especially when it comes to automation. So on campaigns, it might be overkill. And then on top of the motivations and the pain points, and basically every piece of data that the customers would be giving you themselves, you can also segment them based on what we call predictive analytics. And predictive analytics take what I showed you in this part of the video so far, take the recency and the frequency and what product they bought, in what combination they bought, etc., and they automate the entire process. And you can have people messaged 5 days before their expected date of next order, and you can show them the best possible cross-sell based on what they purchased in the past. And those are all capabilities that exist within Klaviyo and exist within companies like Relo, Repeat, and many, many others. So that's ultimately how to think about segmentation. Prospects, customers, divided by recency tiers that are mutually exclusive so that you can tailor the frequency to each different segment in an appropriate way for their engagement level, meaning maximize the safe reach while emphasis on the keyword safe without risking your deliverability. And then beyond that, you should segment OTP customers, active subscription customers, churned customers, and then Beyond that, you can layer the frequency component to do what we call RFM. I'm going to show this separately because it can get quite complex. User motivations, zero-party data that you collect. And then the last piece is the predictive piece, which is actually using machine learning models to predict the right time, the right product, and increasingly so even the right message. There's technologies that we've now started testing for our customers that truly personalize the content on a per recipient basis. And if all of this sounded like a lot, don't worry, because I'm now going to show you exactly how to apply all of this to your own brand. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to create the segments in Klaviyo. I've actually went ahead and pre-created them for you because it would take a while for them to load. But fundamentally, as I said, you want to start with prospects, and prospects are those that have never placed an order. So your first condition is placed order 0 times overall time, because otherwise they're not prospects. You want to have accepts marketing is true or can receive email marketing, and those two you do not perfectly overlap, so you do want to do them separately like this. Accepts marketing is true, is basically Shopify consent, and the other is Klaviyo consent, and as I said, they don't perfectly overlap. You want for the most recent segment to have a condition that says they've been created in the last 15 days, or clicked an email in the last 30 days, or opened an email in the last 30 days. And that will be your A+ prospects category. Those are like the best, warmest, hottest prospects that you have in your account. Now, you could say, why 30? Why in the last 30? Why not in the last 7? And it's a good question to have. In this case, this particular brand is not sending too many emails too frequently. So we want to have at least 30 days in our original window. If you are a frequent sender, which means you're sending daily or perhaps even more than daily, then that most recent window should be much shorter, potentially as short as the last 7 days. But for most brands, this definition is going to be good to go. The next piece that you want to do is a slightly less recent. So the other one was the most recent, this is just recent. We call those A prospects, not A+. And the difference is that we create a segment like this. They opened or clicked an email in the last 60 days, and they've opened an email clicked an email 0 times in the last 30. So they did so between 31 and 60 days ago. And again, the reason why you want to do this is because this segment is mutually exclusive than the other one. People can't be in both at the same time. And then you have your other conditions as well, the way I showed before. Then you want to have prospects B, which is opened in the last 90 or clicked in the last 90, and opened 0 times in the last 60 and clicked 0 times in the last 60. Why do we do this? Because again, we want those to be mutually exclusive. And you could do the same for lapsing, lapsed, and potentially even have a very old Hail Mary segment, which you would only target on your biggest promotions of all time. And that's how you create mutually exclusive recency segments. The exact same logic would apply to your customer segments. The only difference would be that you would head over here and change the place order condition to at least once overall time. So it would only cover your customers. And if you were to do this, just as a reminder, you would have essentially completed the first part of our guide. You would have prospects and customers separately, broken down by different recency groups so that you could message them separately. I will show you the 2 main benefits of doing this. If you're using mutually exclusive segments the way I showed you, you can head over to the audience breakdown and you can actually see how each individual segment is performing. And the beauty of doing that is that you can actually know, does it make sense to be messaging those less engaged segments. And from what you can see here, it's usually, again, the most recently engaged cohorts that drive the majority of the results, which to you, from a deliverability standpoint, really does mean that you should not be messaging everybody at every time, and you should, if you do want to message more people, you should do so in a lesser frequency. Now, here's the suggested frequency by segment. The rule of thumb is very simple. The more recently somebody engaged, the more often you can email them, the longer it's been, the lighter you can go. A plus, include them in all broad campaigns, whether it's prospects or customers. 31 to 60 days plus, prospects up to 2 campaigns per week, customers, include them in all broad campaigns. 61 to 90 days engaged, 1 broad campaign per week, up to 2 per week for customers. And then beyond that, you wanna go down even more. So just message your prospects, let's say once a month, up to 2 times per month for customers. If it's between 121 to 180 days, 1 campaign every 45 days is all you need to do for prospects, 1 campaign every 30 days. You don't really want to have Hail Mary prospect segments. Usually it's not going to be effective. For customers, you can try to do this maybe once every 45 days, and then depending on the results, you can adjust frequency or not. Maybe it's not worth to do so. So if you want to get like a very concrete frequency, use this frequency and adjust your sending accordingly. So let's review this subscription segment, and in so doing, build on what we've discussed already. So when it comes to opened emails, a distinction that you should have in mind is whether the open is real or not. And what Klaviyo allows you to do, you can find this by, let me just do it from scratch so that there's no ambiguity. If you essentially include opened email from scratch, you can press on this button here, which allows you to filter further, and you can select Apple Privacy Open is true or false. So you wanna always have it be false, because otherwise the open is not real. It can be a fake open. And similarly, you wanna do the same for clicked email. You wanna filter by bot click and then have it be false. Otherwise, the click is not real. What you're noticing here is added to cart and started checkout, and checkout started and did product, blah, blah, blah. All of those are website level engagements, and they do show interest in the way that opening an email or clicking an email does. So in your most recent segments, you want to be including those. This becomes less relevant in the less recent segments because, I mean, if they are not engaging with your emails in the last 90 days, even though they may go to the website, it's unlikely that they will do so on day 91, right? So at the beginning, you want to include those conditions so that you basically target everybody that you can that would be recently engaged, but then it becomes less relevant. And what you'll notice is that there's a started checkout and a checkout started event. Those are 2 separate things. One, this one down here, is a Shopify event, and the other is a custom started checkout metric, which in this case we use for this brand. It might not apply to yours, but the theory is that it doesn't really matter if they started checkout on the Shopify website or they started through a custom landing page that may have its own conversion metrics. If they show intent, you should include them anyway. And then to talk a little bit about the subscription piece, what you want to do is, as I showed you at the beginning, take your customers rather, and break them into active subscribers, churned subscribers, and one-time purchasers. And in this case, we have an active subscriber. You would go to properties about someone and find loop active subscriber, and then you would say this is true. And if you use results, it would say RC active subscriber, and again you would find that you would be able to set it in a similar way. Same with Skio, same with Smarter. All of the subscription technologies work in the same way. You would go to properties about someone, you wouldn't find the custom property that says active subscription. Now, the next piece when it comes to subscription segments is that just like in our regular segments, we want to have engagement segments for those as well. So what you would do is, this is the most engaged group, and you would have a less engaged group which has the exact same conditions, but they've not engaged in the last 30, they've engaged in 31 to 60 days ago. And you could similarly create other segments like this. Everything else would be the same, and they would still be active subscribers. Apple privacy would still say false, same with bot clicks, and so on. So I've opened another account and I want to show you how it works on Richard's also, so that you can also see how the segmentation differs here. The rest we've covered already, but basically you want to go again to properties and find RC active subscriber, and then you want to say it is set. And similarly, if you were to, again, we have our customers and we break them into OTP customers, active subscribers, and then we have the churn, the cancelled subscribers. So we just saw active subscribers. This is one-time purchasers. You would essentially go to RC active subscriber and you would say it's not set. And the reason why, just to be clear, the reason why you want to say it's not set is because it was never there. That's what this means. And similarly, you want to have it set because it means it's there. That's what it actually means. And then the last piece, which would be the cancelled subscriptions, you would essentially go to RC active subscription count and you would say it's 0. Those are people that don't have an active subscription that used to have an active subscription. Of course, and this is good for you to know, the subscription companies have their own metrics. There's quite a few metrics here. So all of those are triggered based on subscription actions, and there is one that, for example, says that subscription cancelled. So you could find cancelled subscribers through this metric as well. The difference is that if they cancelled the subscription, perhaps they've started one again, right? So this ensures that they have 0 active subscriptions. So that's how you would go about doing subscription segments. Hopefully it's not too complicated. I'm using real examples so that you can see how it looks in the real world. I'm now going to show you what we call RFM segmentation and how it works. And this might be a little bit more complicated. So I don't know, bring up a cup of coffee so that we can go through it together. Hey, I wanted to take a moment to thank you for watching this far. It really means a lot to me. I'm doing those videos because I want to create the best resource there is for retention marketers. And you may know me, you may know my company, but I want you to know that I really know what I'm talking about. We've helped tons of companies get results. Half recently became the second fastest growing company in the UK. We've helped Everyden. They had 110% year-over-year growth. And like I could go on because we've done it over and over and over again. If you find this valuable and if you believe that the world does need a better source of retention marketing advice, then I urge you to press subscribe, and that would mean the world to me. Comment on this video on what you'd like to see next. Share it with friends that can benefit from it. It really helps. It's gonna keep me motivated and I'm gonna keep producing better and better videos for you. So thank you for watching. Please make sure you subscribe, it really helps. Okay, so I want to show you something that you've probably not seen before. There's a section of Klaviyo that's underneath this advanced tab, which has additional features. And those are features that are typically relevant only for bigger companies, but one of those features is what Klaviyo calls RFM analysis. And RFM stands for recency, frequency, and monetary value. Basically, recency is what we discussed, how much time has passed since they last placed an order. Frequency is how many orders they've placed, and then monetary value is how much money they've spent. And the combination of those different factors can create groups that look like this. Champions would be your most frequent, most recent, highest spending customers, and then your inactives would be people that haven't engaged at all recently, haven't placed an order at all, haven't done so frequently, etc. Those are like the arguably relevant customers in a way. And there's different cohorts that you can create. I think Klaviyo's approach is, in my perspective, good, but like perhaps not detailed enough. So this is good. It's good that you know it exists, but I'm actually going to show you how you can create this for your own brand. And let's start a baseline understanding. What is RFM? RFM stands for recency, frequency, and monetary value. It's a framework that's essentially taking your database and breaking it into groups based on the value that they have for your business. And recency is when did they last purchase, the more recent the better. Frequency, how many times they purchase, the more frequent the better. And monetary is how much they've spent in total. And the key point here is that you can assign a score to people based off of this. And the way it works is that, just to make it very clear, you can have recency, frequency, and monetary scores. And then let's suppose that you assign a score from 5 to 1, right? Like 5 being the highest, and then 4 being then the next group, and then 3 to 1, 1 being the lowest. So what you want to do here is you can basically combine those scores, to put it very simply. So your group that has 5 in recency and 5 in frequency and 5 in monetary, you would call those champions. Some people call them soulmates. Like there's different ways. Honestly, you can call them whatever you want. Ultimately, it doesn't really matter. It's the group is the best customers. That's what matters. They have the greatest existing and future value for your company. 155 would be champions that you've lost. Something like 515 would be a very recent customer that has only placed an order but placed like a massive order, and that could be maybe like a B2B customer, right? Like they bought in bulk. You could have somebody that looks a little bit like this, which would be a very low spending customer that probably won't have that much value in the future for you, and so on. You can create different groups. And the beauty of doing that is that in creating those groups, you get a very clear understanding of how the value of your database increases over time. Because the higher the scores are, the more valuable the contacts are. So if your approach works over time, you should have more champions, right? You should have more frequently spending customers that spend a lot. And as I said, Klaviyo does have this built into their advanced version, like they call it Marketing Analytics or CDP for like the full advanced version. But you can replicate all of this actually fairly simply within your own Klaviyo account without paying extra for it. What you need to do is essentially take your database and break it into what we call quintiles. So that would be your like top 20%, and then 13% here, 20% here, bottom 20% here, and then you would export all of your database and just assign thresholds. So this might be has spent 300 plus, and this currently has spent like 10. This really depends on what the actual values of your database is. And then once you had those definitions and thresholds, you could have something like this, that I consider a recency of 5 if they've placed an order in the last 7, a 4 between 8 and 30, and 1 more than 150 days ago. This would need to be customized to your own brand. Obviously, these are just numbers, but it could be done in a way like this. And then what you could do is basically, you could either right away create segments that would have those conditions. So somebody that placed order at least 7 times over all time and placed an order at least once in the last 7 days, and what the monetary is, revenue is at least 121, like probably this should be much higher, let's say 500 or whatever. And you could have this, and then you could have a group of champions. And you could do this for all of the segments that you'd like to develop in that way. Generally, you want to be focusing on the edge cases, like your best customers and how you can retain them. So when they start to lapse, like how do you bring them back? And then you want to focus on your again, edge cases, those that would like spend a lot in the first order, or those that would spend very little. Maybe you could even exclude those. And the reason why you want to focus on this is so that you can understand what incentive you should be giving to those different groups. Usually, the higher the RFM score, the lesser the need is to provide an incentive, because the customer is highly invested and engaged in the brand. The lower the RFM score, the more incentive they need to come back. And there's this threshold, particularly this is related to the monetary definition, where it doesn't really make to incentivize at all. Like if they have spent less than $20, maybe you've even lost money acquiring them. So you shouldn't really give them more coupons to save even more, right? Like it's just not a good enough customer for you to be spending incentives on. So RFM really allows you to do a bunch of things. It allows you to understand the value of your database. It's a snapshot into the value of the database. Then how the database evolves over time. And then it allows you to target people with the correct incentives. And you'll notice that I said incentives. I didn't really say message, because RFM shows you what people do, how much they spend, how many times they buy, but it doesn't really tell you why they do it. To do this, you need to understand what motivates people and what problem they're trying to solve. And I've recorded an extensive pop-up training video. You should be able to find this on this channel, and even one about welcome flows, which does go into how you can collect this information from the pop-ups themselves. So do take a look in terms of decoding why people do things. You can collect this information as the sign up, and then RFM will tell you the what, and the sign up source will tell you the why. And then the last piece that we have is predictive targeting. So what I'm going to show you is relevant, but it is mostly relevant when your company has a lot of data. If you've just launched, if you have less than 10,000 customers, probably you won't see that big of a lift when it comes to predictive. There's not that much data to predict that much, right? So I will let you know of what exists so that you're aware of it and can apply it when the time is right, though. So if you go to predictive analytics about someone, you'll find like a bunch of different options here. And the first one is predicted channel affinity. And you have email and SMS. You will soon have WhatsApp as well. What this is that it basically allows you to target people in the channel they are most likely to engage with. So if you have omni-channel campaigns, you want to be using this so that you don't send email to somebody that converts more or engages more with SMS and vice versa. This is actually a very good way to optimize the channel mix that you have. Then we have what Klaviyo rather calls predicted customer lifetime value, and you can essentially enter a value here, and you can in so doing more or less replicate the effect of the RFM that I showed you. So you can find customers that will have, based on Klaviyo's machine learning model, a high likelihood of purchasing again from you. You can do the same for number of orders. You can do the same for gender, and you can target likely male, likely female users separately. And you can even have the best cross-sell date, which is good because it can help you time messages to people that are likely to be responsive to them, instead of bombarding people that won't necessarily care about the promotion you have. And just like you can, of course, do the predicted, you can do the historic versions as well, which is like how many orders they've placed and how much value they've had collectively over time, etc. So if your AOV is 100, you might say I want to target people that have had twice the AOV overall time. So like that would be how you do this, even though like historic is not really predictive, so probably they should remove this from the predictive category. It's still good to know that it exists. And then you have the average days between orders. That's basically the time interval between the first order and then the next. Not actually, I'm wrong. Not the first, but it's the average. So between one order and the next. So if somebody has like 10 orders, it's going to be the average across the 10 orders, not just the first and the second. So that's how this works. And I think this concludes most of what you can do with Klaviyo segments. I'm going to show you one last thing so that you can put everything I showed you together in a way that actually makes sense, that you can apply to your brand, hopefully today. Okay, I want to close with this slide so that you can see how all of what I showed you would work together in an example content calendar. And again, let's go back to the beginning. Our objective is to maximize reach in a way that's safe and doesn't risk deliverability. So your first objective should be segment prospects and customers, create your recency segments, and then message them in a frequency that doesn't get you in trouble from a deliverability standpoint, A, and B, that you can sustain from a content production perspective. Once you do this, step 2 is to have meaningfully different content for meaningfully different cohorts. And this is an example of how that would look like. You could have 2 messages that are trying to reactivate those that have canceled their subscription, build into your calendar. You would have your regular emails that go out to your engaged audience. You would have separate for one-time purchasers and leads, meaning prospects, so that you would try to convert them to subscriptions, and you would have a couple for active subscribers as well. And the whole purpose of doing this is so that you visualize that ultimately, whole point of all of this is to treat segments differently. I see this in, I want to say 99% of cases where the marketer has done segmentation, but the brand is treating everybody in the same way. And there's really no sense in this. If you take what I show you here and send the same messages to everybody, there's no point to having the segments. You might as well just message everybody. It only starts making sense once you start treating the segments differently. So, to recap, number 1, maximize the number of messages that you send. Send them to the maximum number of people, the maximum number of times you can get away with, without risking your deliverability or being overwhelmed from a content production standpoint. Once that's done, try to create meaningfully different content for meaningfully different cohorts so that you will drive incremental results by targeting them separately. The easiest way to start is prospects, customers divided by recency tiers, and then OTP customers separate from churned or cancelled subscribers and active subscribers. And then, if you want to take things a step further, you should probably consider having zero-party data collected and then trying to adjust the messaging according to what users tell you they care about. I posted a video for how to create welcome flows that actually do that, in case you want to see how you can collect and optimize accordingly. I show an example by Gruns even. And once you've done that, you want to get into optimizing the offers and the incentives you get, which is why you should do an RFM segmentation as well, so that you can target your champions and your at-risk customers and potentially not target some, like your inactives. And if you do all of this and you still want more, there's even predictive machine learning capabilities built into the technologies these days. I showed some that Klaviyo has, but there's more. There's Relo, there's Repeat, there's tons to even add on top of what I showed you today. But I promise you, if you were to apply what I showed you, you would honestly likely not even need to do that much with predictive analytics, because what I showed you is really 99% of what matters in e-commerce segmentation. Hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did like the video, please make sure you subscribe, make sure you leave a comment. What do you want me to cover next? What can I do better? What can I do differently? And it would really mean a lot to me if you could share this with people that would find value in it. It will keep me motivated to keep producing content like this for you. Thank you for watching.